This glowing jet is fully electric, and it can be heated up to 2000 degrees Celsius. But it isn't used to propel aircraft through the air. It's instead used to heat giant furnaces, hot enough to make massive steel blocks glow red. On a recent trip to Germany, I got to meet the engineers actually building this, in an industry that operates at a scale that's genuinely hard to grasp.
Massive!
Steel is everywhere in our daily lives, and electrifying its production will reduce our reliance on global fossil fuels and cut emissions. But doing this doesn't come without some challenges, including using electricity to reach some extreme temperatures. So let's see how a material that we've known about for hundreds of years is now unlocking temperatures previously out of reach for electric heaters. As always, I respect your time, so let's get straight into the engineering. I'm Ryan Ennis, and this is a Ziroth Deep Dive. This video came about thanks to the climate innovation think tank, Future Cleantech Architects. This means that we'll not only see the electric jet heater, but also some other incredible innovations I saw there too. The electric jet heater comes from a company called HyperHeat, and its working principles are actually not too dissimilar from this 2 kilowatt heat gun. If we take a look inside, you'll see that there's an electric motor and impeller that draw in air and force them over a heating element, which then allows the air to be heated and shot out the end. Now, in the HyperHeat system, this air could come from a variety of sources, but the idea is the same. It goes over a heating element and is blasted out of the end. The incoming air becomes highly turbulent, which makes it good at extracting heat from the hot heating element that sits between the fan and the outlet, causing the hot air to be forced out. The heating element is often made from nichrome, which is a nickel-chromium alloy, and it gets hot as current flows through it due to its resistance. However, for this commercial home appliance, the air coming out the end is only around 500 or 600 degrees Celsius, much lower than is needed for heating steel furnaces. Therefore, the HyperHeat system, which will operate in the hundreds of kilowatts to megawatts range, needs a few modifications. The first obvious difference between the heat gun and the HyperHeat system is the scale. It's heavily insulated in a metal enclosure to keep the heat concentrated in the right locations. Secondly, there are modifications in the heating element because the commercial heat gun uses the nichrome, which would melt at around 1400 degrees Celsius and probably cause issues much sooner than that, which would not be good for the industrial jet heater. The solution is to use an advanced oxide ceramic for the heating element instead. Engineers have been studying oxide ceramics for hundreds of years. However, usual oxide ceramics, like those often used in soldering irons, aren't always able to withstand such extreme heats and can be very tricky to fabricate and manufacture. So, HyperHeat is coming up with their own oxide ceramic formulation.
Yeah, it's sometimes very surprising to people that we use actually ceramics and that they are electrically conductive, because most people think that ceramics were an isolator. And we use special kind of ceramics that have this property, especially at high temperatures.
This graph demonstrates what Frederick means by especially at high temperatures. The resistance of the material decreases as temperature goes up, which is the opposite of what you would expect with a metal. Most ceramics tend to insulate because their electrons are locked in place. But heat is energy, and if you push the temperature of these materials high enough, you start to liberate some charge carriers. For example, this could be electrons in some oxides, and therefore the material starts to become conductive. An interesting catch is that this falling resistance opens up a different engineering challenge. Firstly, a cold solid oxide barely conducts, so it often has to be preheated before it's switched on. Then, once hot, any spot that runs slightly hotter than its neighbour pulls in more current, because it has less resistance and therefore heats up further, which can cause it to run away with itself in heating. This normally means that oxide ceramic heaters need to account for this in the power delivery and control, though I don't know how this works at such high temperatures, as the thermodynamics can get a little bit strange. Add to this the brittleness under thermal shock, and the awkward problem of joining a metal lead to something glowing at 2000 degrees Celsius, and we can see plenty of problems for HyperHeat to solve. And they're betting their new formulation can help, so I'm super excited to see where this technology goes. Some of you might also be wondering why the flame is orange, as that normally happens due to unburnt carbon in fossil fuel jets. Well, HyperHeat told me that it could be due to water content in the air, though I also wonder if there's any sodium or calcium getting in, as these produce similar colours in flame tests. The next part of my trip and the Future Cleantech Festival was to go and see where these electric jet heaters were going to be implemented. And that was at a giant steel plant. When I was there, the huge furnaces opened up to reveal glowing steel blocks which were forged into new shapes to be used in large turbines and ships. Seeing this really reminded me that electrifying these industries is a different ballgame than electrifying your car or getting a heat pump. These challenges really require teamwork and getting everyone from industry, startups and policy to chip in and make a difference. And this idea is fundamental to the work of the Future Cleantech Architects.
So we need the innovators, both the consortia and the startups, the scale-ups, together with the incumbent industry to see where there's a match, where they can team up. And probably most importantly, policymakers need to see it firsthand and then be advised independently, science-based, to take pragmatic decisions.
Another industrial system used to electrify the steel industry that I saw whilst I was there was an electric arc furnace at the company KNDS, which is used to melt down scraps of steel into molten steel ready to be recycled into new applications. I was able to stand up close to the steel as it poured out of the furnace, though I did decide to retreat pretty quickly when I saw molten bits of steel spitting in my general direction. The electric arc furnace works by creating an arc between 3 graphite electrodes and the scrap steel below. The 3 electrodes map directly onto the 3 phases of an AC power supply, arranged 120 degrees apart in a triangle. Each one carries a separate phase to ground through the melting steel itself. The arc temperature can exceed 3000 degrees Celsius and is hot enough to quickly reduce solid scraps into liquid steel. As the steel melts down, each electrode moves downwards independently, precisely controlled to maintain a consistent arc length and evenly heat across the melting scrap metal. Oxygen and carbon are also injected into the mix to fine-tune the chemistry before the furnace can be tilted and the molten steel can be poured out, ready to go into the preheated, glowing hot ladles. Whilst electrification of steel has huge benefits in terms of energy security and emissions, the cost of electricity in Europe and grid infrastructure are still real challenges. Steel is just one of the many heavy industries trying to electrify its heat demand, and industrial heat is everywhere. Food processing, textiles, chemicals, and ceramics. And collectively, it accounts for roughly 20% of all global energy consumption. Not all of it needs blast furnace temperatures, but electrifying it at scale still means a staggering amount of electricity and grids that frankly aren't ready for that load just yet. This is a key reason why thermal energy storage is gaining real traction. Charge up during off-peak hours when electricity is cheap and the grid has headroom, then discharge that heat when the processes actually need it. This decouples your electricity bill from the time that you need the energy, which is a very appealing business case in industrial heat. I got to spend time with several companies working on this, and there is so much innovation happening at every layer, from the materials storing the heat to the business models making it work financially. There's definitely a lot more on all of these topics that I want to cover, so there'll definitely be some dedicated Ziroth videos coming in the future. But the last thing I want to move on to from the trip is construction, which is actually an industry very linked to steel.
Emissions of the entire construction sector are beyond 30% of total emissions because it includes steel, it includes concrete. And in concrete, cement alone, the core ingredient, is responsible to 7 to 8% of global emissions, which is just such a massive chunk.
It was great to see engineers at the festival tackling these emissions head on, including some clever work replacing concrete with timber, using Mother Nature's trick of aligning forces with wooden fibres. A standout demo of this had the city mayor load a large, unsupported slab made primarily from timber with 20 tons of water. And thankfully, it held up strong. Otherwise, that would have been pretty awkward for everyone involved if the structure just collapsed. However, the highlight of the festival for me was definitely meeting everyone working on reducing energy-related emissions from different angles. I chatted at length with structural engineer Kisko Mena, whose work on defining how efficient we are at using materials in buildings recently informed a pivotal UN report. As a Ziroth subscriber, he also clearly has great taste in YouTube content. Hi Kisko. Meeting everyone at this festival and hearing what everyone's working on has definitely motivated and inspired me even more to keep making videos on this channel. And a huge thanks to the Future Cleantech Architects for putting this on and providing me with funding so I could come out and join it. Now the sun has just decided to blind me, but as you're still watching, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps the channel a lot. You might also like some of our other videos, like this one on a new battery from BYD that is insanely fast at charging and cheap. And as always, thanks for watching.